You're tuned in and now listening to the program Straight Talk with the United Independent Movement, presented by your host, Professor Aubrey Burger, and co-host, the President of the United Independent Movement, Tilanie, with our anchor, Chris Erodis from Port Elizabeth, and from time to time, along with various guests, only here on JoyRadio, every Thursday evening from 6:30 till 8 p.m. Here on this program, where nothing is held back, and where you will get straightforward answers and sincere talk about the daily events in South Africa. Yes, that's what affects every citizen in this country.
You are tuned in here on JoyRadio, your companion and friend in Jesus. The following program is paid for and proudly brought to you by the United Independent Movement. This program contains political content. The views and opinions expressed in this program and broadcasts are those of the UIM and its representatives, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of JoyRadio, its management team, sponsors, the owner or board of directors. This program is paid for by the United Independent Movement, which accepts full responsibility for its content in accordance with the Electoral Act and ICASA regulations. JoyRadio, your companion and friend in Jesus.
Evening, goeienaand aan al ons wonderlike luisteraars daar hierso op Joy Radio van reg oor die wêreld. Yes, good evening to each and everyone. Yes, we are back. It's Thursday evening and it's time for Straight Talk with the UIM. And tonight, yes, we've got our president with us as normal, as usual. And Chris is also waiting there in PE. And this week we've got Danny back with us as well from last week. And he will also be featuring now as a regular on the program with us. And then we've got a representative and a candidate for the Helderberg in the Western Cape, who we're going to introduce to you a little bit later. And this candidate is going to tell you all about herself, who she is, where she comes from, how many cupcakes she bakes a day, and so forth, and what she's going to do for the community down there. But first of all, let's start with some political news for the week. But first of all, President Taljaard, goeienaand en welkom vanaand weer eens op Joy Radio.
Goeienaand Prof, goeienaand Danny, Tilanie en Chris. It's nice to be with you. Ek gaan my keel skoon kry. Ja, as ek dink dis ons 6de of 7de uitsending hierdie, so ons is baie dankbaar aan Joy Radio wat ons hierdie geleentheid gegee het om te kan praat met die mense. Ek sien ons het al klaar omtrent by die 7000 intekenaars of luisteraars vanaand, so ons gaan vanaand 'n baie interessante gesprek hê en dit is altyd lekker om saam met julle op hierdie paneel te sit en bietjie te gesels oor die UIM en wat aangaan in Suid-Afrika.
Daar sê baie dankie, Jacques. Dan Chris, welcome once again this evening.
Thanks, Prof. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having us and hosting the UIM.
Thank you, Chris. En ja, dan is het Daniel, as he's called, but we just call him Danny Boy, daar onder in die Ooskaap. Welcome, Danny, once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Prof. Good evening, all the listeners and esteemed colleagues and our president. It's nice to be here tonight again, and thank you for having me again, Prof. Aubrey.
As always a pleasure. And then, of course, our candidate for this evening is Tilanie. and she's there from Helderberg in the Western Cape. Tilanie, welcome. It's your first rodeo on Joy Radio this evening.
Good evening, Prof. Good evening, listeners and everybody else. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for us to have you on the program as well. Thanks a million. Danny, can I start with you this evening? I've got a question. Nationwide failure of South Africa's democracy. Well, we know it's a failure. Parties no longer represent real constituencies. And that is a two-part question. Can you give us a bit of your overview regarding this, as you are also known to as on the social medias as Political Dan, and actually dissecting all political matters. Please give us your point of view on this one.
So, Prof, with that particular one, you're having a look at political parties across the spectrum have lost alignment with citizens' needs, service failures, and protests. The institutional collapse reveal a state of divorce from accountability, where South Africa faces legitimacy crises when representation has become symbolic rather than functional. So in summary, this theme exposes the erosion of representative democracy in South Africa. Political parties have become detached from the citizen base, functioning as self-preserving elites rather than authentic voices of the electorate.
Wow, that is an absolutely mouthful. Yeah, you said they became detached from everything, if we can put it that way. I think we should bring the panel in here now and just discuss this for a little bit, and so we can give the listeners a bit of more clarity what this all actually means and how each person actually perceives this. Jacques, can we start with you?
Yes, Prof. I think the topic reads nationwide failure of South African democracy. Parties no longer represent real constituents. That's the topic of the headline. That's the title of the headline. I'm going to be very honest with you. You guys are probably not going to like what I'm going to say now, but this whole article or news headlines it sounds to me being drafted by those people that are trying to push through those new amendments to the Electoral Board, because it ties in with those changes that have been proposed of the Electoral Reform Amendment Bill. So I agree and I also disagree with the contents of that article. I think it is a fact that political parties are no longer truly representing the real constituencies or the interests of ordinary citizens, but not all parties. I think there are definitely a few parties out there that still do, especially the smaller ones. I think if you want to, if this actually, how can I put this? This actually applies to some of the bigger parties out there. Let's call them the top 5 or the top 3 or the top 4. I know it's the DA. It's obviously the Minister of Home Affairs, Leon Schreiber, that tabled that motion or introduced that amendment bill. We will speak about that later, of course, the Electoral Reform Amendment Bill. And obviously, it's their submission that political parties no longer truly represent the real constituencies or the interests of the ordinary citizens, and they are obviously pushing for electoral reform, to change the system, to change the whole voting process, the whole electoral system. We'll get to that. I don't want to jump the gun. But this topic or this headline ties in basically with what we are going to discuss a little bit later on. And I've got some criticism. Well, the UIM have got some criticisms towards that bill. I think this is a move by some of the bigger parties to strengthen themselves and their foothold on South Africa to the detriment of the smaller parties. I know that a lot of these bigger parties have never been in favor of the smaller parties out there. They constantly, we constantly read articles and statements in the media where some of these bigger parties are putting the smaller parties down. And in my opinion, they're doing that because they view us as a threat. I think some of the smaller parties out there, especially the UIM, are parties that are exactly the opposite of what this news headline actually says and discusses. Because we are 100% a party that represents the real constituencies of let's call it of the UIM and the interests of ordinary citizens. So yes, this is there's some truth and merit in what's being said here, but I honestly don't think it applies to the UIM, and it also doesn't apply to some of the other parties or the smaller parties out there. But I think maybe the ANC and the DA and some of the bigger parties out there can take a hint from this article. I think and like I said, it seems to have been written in support of those electoral amendments that have been proposed.
Okay, that sounds, I think, a matter of fact, that the smaller parties are actually becoming a threat for the bigger dogs. And it's always been that the smaller ones are usually a threat for the bigger ones. Chris, have you got anything to add for us here?
Hi, Prof. Yes, small political parties. It's like a young guy with a very thin fist. So when you hit the big guy in his stomach, it really hurts. And the UIM in the last 18 months has been punching way above its weight belt. They're running scared, and I've said it many times. The powers that be take into account the ANC, the DA, just looking at the two big political parties, yes, and to a large degree, we can say the EFF as well, do not like us, not because of our policy, but because people like Danny constantly call them out, constantly hammering them. And when you get to be as big as they are, they don't want to be hammered. They don't want the accountability anymore. They're just in it for the money. That's what we think. That's the way I feel at the UIM, and they do not want to be exposed, and they will do anything in their power to make sure that smaller parties don't get to be what they should be. So yes, I fully agree with that, and I think President Jock is a lot more lenient than myself or Daniel would be when it comes to things like that. That's why he has us here. Not to bail us out of trouble, but we the fighters on the ground. And we see this every day. There is a disconnect when it comes to big political parties and the actual constituents. Massive disconnect.
The foot soldiers, as they are called. But yeah, we've got a foot soldier who are going to fight and fight and fight with all of us. Tilanie, do you probably have any opinions on this, or do you want to abstain?
I am actually going to say that I do feel we are the fighters, and we have to fight for our constituents, for the country, really, because the bigger parties have, as has been said, lost track of what the people on the ground really need. Absolute
amen to that. Now, my next question regarding news headlines this evening. Yes.
Prof, if you don't mind, I just quickly want to add another thing to what was just said. You must also remember that we are actually we are stating the obvious here, because you must remember we are saying that some of the bigger parties are disconnected from their constituents, and I mean, I think I could only imagine that is the exact reason why Minister Schreiber has introduced this bill. And if he was listening to this, he would immediately, chip in and say, listen, but why do you think we are proposing these amendments in the first place? Because we realize that the bigger parties are disconnected from its constituents, and that is why we are addressing this issue and introducing that bill. So, yes, in that regard, I say, well, you know what, hats off, great, well done. You are obviously aware of this, or you see this as a problem, and you're trying to remedy it. But it's also being remedied and there's a cost, unfortunately, that comes with this proposal. And the cost is going to be the survival of the smaller parties out there. So it tends to make one question the true motives, why this is being done, why this is not being done earlier, why only now. Smaller parties have never been a real threat to some of these bigger parties. All of a sudden, you've got smaller parties popping up all over the place, and some of them are really legit. So yeah, we are not saying that that there's an agenda, but there are questions definitely. And like I said, these amendments, they could defend these proposals because they could always say that they realize that there's a disconnect and they are trying to fix it. But people are not considering the flip side of the coin, if I can put it that way. This will be to the detriment of the smaller parties out there, and the smaller parties out there serve a huge purpose. And the majority of the smaller parties out there are not disconnected from their constituents and the citizens of South Africa. So I just wanted to quickly clarify that.
Thank you, Jacques. Yeah. There's always more questions than answers. And that brings me then to this other point. Our beloved so-called President Ramaphosa currently admits that ANC governance failures amid coalition turmoil. So he actually admits that there is a problem regarding in that regard. Dan, have you probably got us a view on that?
Absolutely. So the description goes that President Ramaphosa's rare confession of governance failures underscores the deep fractures within both the ANC and the fragile government of national unity. His inability to implement decisive reform exposes a leadership vacuum and questions whether renewal is still possible under a party consumed by its own contradictions.
Yeah, these contradictions. If we also talk about, in this regard, but where this targets also actually the executive credibility of governance, paralysing, aligning with public dissolution and leadership. And I think there's so many dissolution currently out there, with all this statements that have been made. For one day this, for other day that, and it's. Ja, dit is soos hulle sê, jy weet, dit is nie dieselfde ertjie wat dit is dieselfde tipe ertjie wat uit daai selfde pot uitkom elke keer nie. Because every day it changes color and it changes shape. But Jacques, I'm sure you got a point of view on this first as well.
Yeah, Prof, once again, I just want to read out the title of the topic or the news headline. It says, Ramaphosa admits ANC governance failures amid coalition turmoil. So ek gaan nou gou oorslaan in Afrikaans en ek skoon half vir almal wat luister hier op JoyRadio om verskoning vra, maar ek gaan dit nie op enige ander manier kan sê as wat ek dit nou gaan sê nie. Partykeer moet jy eers in hoekkaart klap, voor jy besef jy bly al jare lank op 'n hoekplaas. So as jy nou praat van hypocrisy en 'n contradiction en al hierdie lekker dinge. Ja, jy weet ek lees sulke berigte soos hierdie. En dan skud ek net my kop en dan rol ek amper my kar op die hoofweg en dan fokus ek weer en dan ry ek weer ordentlik. I mean, that is like stating the obvious. My question to this would be, really? Only now? Is the ANC only failing now? And are you only now starting to realize and admit that the ANC is failing? What was the whole purpose of the Zondo Commission? When was the Zondo Commission? That was 2019, 2020. I mean, did nobody take a leaf from that book or whatever you want to call it? So it's just, you know what, this is just to keep us busy. it's just blah blah. It's people just saying things because they don't know what else to say. It's like people that write songs when they can't find lyrics or they don't have the skill or the talent to write proper lyrics for a song, they start making up their own sounds. So this is exactly what it is.
That's where da stuff comes in and nobody understands what it means. Chris, I see you laughing quite lekker there. So what is your point on this, please?
Prof, one has to take into account, you need to go back to the mid and late 1900s, where the ANC was a activist movement. All of a sudden, Honorable Nelson Mandela is released from prison and the ANC takes over government. And that's great, except that they don't have the skill set to run a country. They were excellent as a liberation movement. But the difference between a liberation movement is the same as the difference between man and woman. It's two different things. We think differently, we do differently, we react differently. They inherited a working country. Bottom line, everything worked. All the parastatals worked. But they lacked the skills. And they also lacked the ingenuity to learn from the previous national government on how to do things. And instead of working with them, they oust them as soon as possible. The ability to speak does not make anybody intelligent. So what they've done is, instead of repairing and maintaining and looking after the infrastructures that they had and governing these things, they chose to rule. In ruling, it's theirs, and whoever is the president, as Jacob Zuma once said, I'm the president of this country, everything belongs to me. So you have comparable deniability. Ramaphosa will gladly stand on a stage and he'll say, we need to learn from the DA. But if you listen to, most these things, when people hide things, they hide it right in front of you. The Democratic Alliance, who are they aligned with? Where do they get their money from? When in doubt, follow the money. So you've also got to look at, on the one hand, they knock one another, and on the other hand, they praise one another. There's kop and een mis. So the one is undermining the other one while they're trying to uplift the other one on the other side. It cannot work. There is zero governance. If you look at state capture, you look at the judiciary to a large degree is captured. R1 billion spent on a Zondo commission and not one arrest. I mean, that is, really, what can we do with R1 billion? It's the same to say when China gave South Africa $540 million. It went missing. There's no accountability, and there never will be any accountability. Ramaphosa and the DA are playing for time. The regime has come to an end. Statistically, a regime lost between 25 and 30 years. Their time is done. It's finished. The only thing we need to say to people out there is a very simple question. Who did you vote for last time? How did that work out for you? And that is what I'm laughing about. In my mind, the man who stands as president, like Jock, he's a big chap. He's a handsome chap. I admire the man. There is nothing on Cyril Ramaphosa or John Steenhuisen that I could possibly admire. Except for the cars. I love the cars and the houses. But other than that, there is nothing about them I would like to be. So, no, I'm sorry. They seem to be the only political party that would put the weakest person in a position to lead. I'm sorry, and forgive the phrase, the British have a saying, that is more useless than tits on a man. And I'm sorry, you can't admire this at all. So yes, they're playing for time and their time is finished. That's my 2 cents, Prof.
Thank you, Chris. And before we go to Tilanie, I see we got a message here from our newly sworn in councillor today. He said he should speak right as he is for problem. Cupcake Cyril is for problem. Thank you, Kurt. I think we all agree with you on that one. There is no argument from our side on that. But thanks for taking the time to join us this evening and partake via the WhatsApp platform or on the studio's number. And just once again, 079-678-0510. If you've got a question what you want to put towards the panel regarding the topics what we are discussing tonight, please, nothing else, the topics of tonight, then we will gladly answer it for you. Tilanie, anything from your side on this topic?
Not really, Prof, but I think what does come through, especially if we're taking the two big parties, is the arrogance between the two of them, and I can't figure out which one's more arrogant, quite frankly.
Ah, that's so true, that's so true. Right, that brings me to our last political question of this evening, and the heading is South Africa's unity government on the brink. Fractured politics risk voters' confidence collapse. Now, well, I think that the DA's confidence took a bit of a knock with their leader, with his Macarena dance moves and stuff, all social media while they were there on tour. I don't think that was very diplomatic what they've done there. Ek wil my nie uitlaat daaroor nie, want ek gaan miskien net iets sê wat my nie beaam nie. But Danny, rather give your point of view, please.
Prof, thank you. So, Prof, unity without purpose breeds instability. That's how I like to start this one off. The government of national unity, once hailed as a renewal plan, is now paralyzed by ideological divergence and coalition partners clash over economic and ethical direction. And Prof, in May this year, when President Cyril Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen went to the White House to go and speak to Donald Trump, John Steenhuisen put the DA as the savior of South Africa. That without the DA, we will have a coalition of doomsday. But what did the DA go and do to the Good Party in Krakiel this week? They went and they negotiated with the EFF, the very party that they said would be a doomsday coalition. They went and negotiated with them to get their vote in a no confidence towards the municipal manager, whom was a good part of the Good Party, to get them out, offering the position to the EFF. So, are you really the savior of South Africa if you are negotiating with the very party that you're saying you're going to save South Africa from?
Well, in my point of view, no. Because I also know that, I've also read that the EFF also actually said to them, before we're going to talk to you, there's certain things what you need to apologize for what you said about us.
Absolutely.
I've got actually another name for that. Maar ja, kom ons gaan na Jacques toe. Nee, president, sê jy vir ons bietjie jou gevoel oor hierdie ene.
Ja, Prof, I want the people to understand that this is not a party bashing session. This is not what we are doing on Thursday evenings. And the thing is, with a party that proclaims to be an honest party that speaks the truth, that means that you have to be honest all the time and speak the truth all the time, even when the truth sometimes hurts, and sometimes when honesty could get you in trouble. And that is what we are doing at the moment. We have always been a party that gives credit where credit is due. And I mean, Neil used to give a lot of credit to a lot of people and a lot of parties when they did good things, and so will we. But at the same time, when they don't, we will call them out and we will question it and we will expose it. So we are not here bashing the DA or bashing anybody. We don't want bashing the ANC. But yeah, this is not a DA bashing session. But there are things happening and certain decisions are being made and certain things are So there's a lot of contradictions, let me rather put it that way. There's a lot of saying, a lot of one thing is being said and something entirely different is being done. And we call these things out. That is what we do. So I just wanted to make that very clear so that the people understand. Yeah, Prof, the thing is government of national unity. You know, it's funny. It's funny when they call it a government of national unity when the parties that are part and parcel of that government of national unity doesn't even call it a government of national unity themselves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the DA, I think it was Helen Zille, that said that this is not a government of national unity, this is an ANC-DA coalition. And I apologize if I'm wrong, but if memory serves me correct, that was what was said. And there's a couple of parties that have been included, I would say, for convenience sake. They were handed a couple of positions. There's a lot of people that have speculated in the media, and there's a lot of articles that have been written on this and political opinions given on this, that some of these positions that went to some of these other parties that have been included in this ANC-DA coalition were positions that the ANC and the DA were not necessarily interested in. But they did it for the sake of, creating this illusion of a government of unity. If it was a government of national unity, then every party represented in the National Assembly would be part of it. So, no, I don't believe it's a government of national unity. Government means or includes all parties that serve on the National Assembly. Because every single party that has a seat in the National Assembly is a party that has been voted for by the people of South Africa. Those parties, every single party represents a portion of the people in South Africa that voted for them, that entrusted them with, the responsibility of making decisions on their behalf. So how can you call it the government of national unity when there are parties excluded from it? That is my opinion. So, yeah, the old system, I think if people think back some years ago, before we had this GNU, you basically had the ruling party and you had the opposition. And the opposition was the DA. And all of a sudden, this is another reason why we are fighting for the existence of smaller parties in South Africa, because who is going to exercise checks and balances over these big parties? The big parties used to do it themselves because, like I said, you had a ruling body or a ruling party and a couple of other parties that formed the opposition, but now they are all part of one governance or government system. So who else is going to exercise checks and balances over these parties that are now in coalition with one another? And we can't, unfortunately, leave that responsibility to the EFF and the MK party alone. I mean, that's like picking a lot for your heart. So, no, we will continue fighting for the UIM's existence, and we will continue fighting for the existence of other like-minded parties out there that share the same principles as us, because there are parties out there that share our principles and our views and objectives, and we are going to fight to ensure that we've got a place in South Africa and that we've got a voice. We've got a big constituency and a huge following out there, and it's growing. And those people's voices need to be heard as well, and those people need to be represented as well. But more will be said when we get to our main topic of the evening, and then we will discuss this, I think, in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Jock. Before we go to Chris, I got a message here from Garth Jack. He says, a reminder to the listeners that the Democratic Party was once a small party, but only secured 3.48% of a municipal vote in 1995-96. So all small parties can become bigger parties. Well, that's absolutely true, and I personally foreseen that the UIM in the future is going to be one of the big players in the pen. That's for sure. Chris, your view on the current topic?
Prof, I have to agree with President Job there 100%. I unfortunately lack the filters that he has. He's a much better person than I am. I was born with many things, but not with filters. Like I said, when you're going to hide something, you hide it right in front of us. Helen Zille was 100% right. It was. When certain individuals met with Mr. Trump, they were introduced, and I quote, as my Minister of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Not the opposition, not nothing. All through, you read media statements, it simply says the ruling party and the opposition. But there isn't an opposition anymore. There is an alliance. That's what it is. You want to know who the opposition is? They're sitting right here at this podcast. We are the opposition. We are not fighting for better politics. We're not fighting for anything other than every rational South African race, color, or creed that still believes in this country. That is what we're fighting for. And that is what we stand for. And that's why we won't sell out, because you can't put a price to that. We've already paid the price for 31 years. We refuse to pay the price anymore. So I agree 100% with Jock on this. Our time is now. It's time for change.
It is, of course, time for change. And change there should be. Thank you, Chris. Tilanie, I think the time has arrived that Tilanie of the Western Cape from Helderberg tells us who Tilanie is, what Tilanie going to do for the people of South Africa and the Western Cape, and why she wants to be a councillor down there, because she has put it up her hand to say, I want to be a candidate, and I want to be a candidate for the UIM. And after your introduction, we're now going to ask the president of the UIM to ask his favorite questions for all the potential candidates here on JoyRadio.
Thank you, Prof. Let me just first start off and say I am standing in wards 83 and 100 of the Helderberg, which is Gordons Bay and Strand in the Western Cape. I decided to actually stand because, we all keep complaining. We all look at the various parties and nobody quite fits the bill. And I just realized that unless I stand and I try and make a difference, it will just continue as is. And I then have no reason to continue complaining. Apart from that, I took quite a while to decide, should I join the UIM? But looking at everything, I actually realized it's probably the only party in South Africa that hits every mark for me. And the party that is there for the people, not as actual politicians, because we are all just normal individuals. And that's why I decided to stand up, put my hand up, and become part of the UIM.
Thank you for that, Tilanie. President Jock, can I give you the floor? I know you always got some very interesting questions what you want to ask with the candidates.
Yeah, Prof, this is just a reminder. I mean, this is something that we have said multiple times in the past. A lot of the people out there, might stay in wards that have active, caring, contributing candidates or councillors that make a hell of a difference for their communities. And those could be DA councillors, they could be Freedom Front Plus councillors, I would go so far as to say even councillors from some of these less popular parties that we are in disagreement with constantly. If that is the case, then you know what, by all means, then you are lucky then you are being served by people that care, you are being served by people that are competent, and you know what, I would not bat an eye, or I would not think anything of it if those people get re-elected in the local government election, because those people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like I said previously, we will always give credit where credit is due. But I can tell you, right, that is in the majority of wards and communities in South Africa, that is not the case. That is not the case, and it hasn't been the case for quite some time. And unfortunately, you know, there are parties out there that they've got a huge media or campaign, or whatever you want to call it, marketing machine. They've got thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rands that they can utilize, you know, come election time. And they are very impressive, you know, when they campaign, it's quite the sight. It's very impressive. And you know what? They have been successfully managing to get re-elected for 30 odd years. And this doesn't only just apply to the ANC. I'm talking about a lot of other parties as well that have constantly been there in these top leadership positions that keep on getting re-elected and re-elected. And if those councillors, if the opposite was true, then South Africa would not be in the mess it is at the moment. But it's not. The opposite is not true. The majority of the people, they are not serving the interests of the people of South Africa. They are not. They are either serving their own interests or their party's interests. So we are asking the people of South Africa, you know, and we will keep on asking this question leading up to the elections. And Chris said it beautifully when he said, how did your last vote work out for you? So people must go and take a long, hard look at themselves, look at their communities, look at the circumstances around them, their surroundings, the level of service delivery that they have enjoyed in the last couple of years, and then decide. You know, is it time for change? Is it time to give someone else a crack at the title? Is it time to maybe do things differently this time around? Or, like I said, if you are one of those lucky people that live in a ward that works, where service delivery is happening, where the people's interests are being looked after, and where people are being served by their councillor, then by all means re-elect that councillor. But please, don't be one of those people that elect somebody purely for the sake of your allegiance to a political party or your long-standing loyalty to a party. And don't let that be the motivating factor when electing somebody. Tilanie, so my question to you would be, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would like you to maybe, I don't know how long you have stayed in the Western Cape. I know you recently moved to the Western Cape. What is the level of service delivery that you are experiencing there? What is the concerns or issues that you have or the people have in your community? Are those issues being addressed? Is there something being done about it? What's the level of service you are getting from in your area? Let me rather put it that way.
Thanks, Jacques. Okay, I'm in the Western Cape nearly 3 years. The service delivery, it really, I want to say, depends mostly where you're at. Overall, if we would compare to other parts of South Africa, I would probably have to say the service delivery is pretty good. However, there are issues. Both Strand and Gordons Bay have sewerage issues. Now, part of this is that pipes have not been replaced. And my issue with that is the DA has been in the Western Cape for quite a while, and they've made inroads, but not enough. We've got raw sewage flowing into the ocean, as an example. We've got areas in Strand where the sewage is just flowing over in the streets, and it's not being fixed. And there's always an excuse about the contractor that is either not doing what he needs to do, etc., etc., and then we take the contractor to court, and then we need to find a new contractor. That's one issue. Potholes, I think, is a South African issue overall, but I would also say, you know, if I compare 3 years ago, I moved down here, or moved down to the Western Cape from Natal, and I thought the roads were phenomenal. They've gone backwards. It's not as phenomenal anymore. Then there are issues like security. Because the Western Cape, in a general sense, is, I would say, economically functioning a bit better than other parts of the country, we are experiencing an influx of people looking for work. There isn't space. This is also then creating robberies and all the rest. So the issues are there, and there are communities that are struggling. They're hungry, they don't have work. You name it, it's got it. So it's not any different to many parts of South Africa, it's just potentially the level.
Thanks, Tilanie. Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, the level of governance and the quality of governance that we have been receiving, or that we have been subjected to, has been of such a low quality that the people of South Africa have significantly lowered their standards, and they have lowered their standards to such an extent that the smallest little ray of sunshine or positive thing that gets done or happens gets us all excited. And we end up writing statements about it and doing lives and what have you. And it's because our standards we have lowered our own standards, because we have grown accustomed to have low quality governance in South Africa. So you are saying that the roads have gone backwards and that there's still sewage running down the streets, but I also hear that you are saying that it's not that bad and it's better than other parts of the country. You know what? That shouldn't be happening at all. It shouldn't be a problem at all. There should be no potholes in South Africa. A road is the most basic form of infrastructure that a country has to maintain. A road, just a piece of road. And our roads are probably some of the worst roads in the world. But like I said, we have lowered our standards so significantly because we've grown so used to that such poor level of governance, locally, provincially, and nationally, that we get excited when very little gets done. We just get excited when something gets done. It doesn't matter how small or insignificant it is. We end up praising people and heaping praise upon people and writing about it and talking about it, because I think we're not used to much, unfortunately, in modern day South Africa. And that's wrong. We should aspire to greater things. We should lift the bar. We should set the bar higher and lift out our standards. And if people are not meeting those requirements, then they should be replaced. It's as simple as that. I mean, we're supposed to be a first world country. It would be easy to make excuses for people. I know sometimes, obviously, you need the tools to do the job. But that is why we are doing what we are doing. We are trying to ensure that, that South Africa that becomes a country where there are people out there that are willing and capable that just lack the tools. And we want to give those people the tools. We want to make sure that those tools are made available to those people. And you know what? We face a lot of criticism. I know politics is a very complex business. It's not as straightforward as it sounds. And we are not politicians. We are regular people, regular business people that have we find ourselves now in the political landscape, and we are a political party and we are part of the political structures of South Africa. But we are not politicians. And there where we lack experience and political know-how and whatever, we will appoint politicians and we will manage them properly and make sure that they stay in their lanes. So people, don't worry. We don't always we might not sound as clever politically, and we might not know all the big words, but trust me, we know how to govern, or we know how to lead, we know how to manage, and we do it with integrity and honesty. And I think at this moment, that is what South Africa needs more than a bunch of politicians out there that have political degrees, that talk, that say, use complex sentences and big words. That's not what South Africa needs. So Tilanie, we wish you well. We are looking forward to assisting you with your campaign. I would have asked you to share your contact details on this live, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but we will post your details on our social media. We want people to reach out to you. We want people to support you in the elections. in a year's time. And we are very happy to have you as part of our structures. You are more than just a candidate. You are also serving the UIM in a few other capacities as well. So thank you for joining us tonight and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very for that. Panel, yes, I've got a voice note here from, and I don't know what it contains, so it's going to be a surprise for us, for all of us. It's from a Tyrone van Niekerk. So I'm going to play it, and when you guys can decide who's going to draw the longest straw to answer him.
Goeienaand, dis die Tyrone van Mpumalanga. Ek wil iets vra. Nee. Wat gaan julle doen met hierdie gomsnypers op die straat wat mense se cellfone, wallet en alles wat gaan steel en goed is wat ons blanke mense wat hard werk vir alles en dan kom hulle en hulle goed te steel. Die meeste van die tyd is meeste van by Boxer en Shoprite en by die nuwe mall. Hier so in Bethel. Wat gaan julle 'n trend doen? Ek wil nou weet. Want die mense is gatvol om daar tot stop en dan hulle gerook word. Wat gaan julle doen 'n trend dit asseblief?
Wel, Tyrone, ek dink ek kan hierdie vir jou sommer antwoord. Wat gaan die UIM doen? Wel, sit ons in die sitplekke waar ons mag en autoriteit het, dan kan ons jou wys wat ons gaan doen. Maar op hierdie stadium, my vraag aan jou terug is, wat doen jy heidaglik daaromtrent? Hier is 'n regte probleem vir die Suid-Afrikaanse polisiedienste. Al wat ons kan doen, ons kan ons verteenwoordiger daar vra om te gaan gesels daarso met die stasiebevelvoerder en vir hulle vra om patrollies en dit op te skerp daarso waar die probleem is. En ek sal definitief na die program vanaand sal ek jou boodskap aan die verteenwoordiger daar vir die Bethel area aanstuur en dan sal die verteenwoordiger daarso dit verder opvat. Ek sal ook vra indien die teenwoordiger kan om met jou kontak te maak. Maar baie dankie vir jou insette daaromtrent. Ons weet dit is 'n probleem, nie net daar by jou nie, is 'n landwyse probleem en soos ek gesê het, ons wil graag vanaand die vrae beantwoorde op die onderwerpe met wat ons deel. En dan I seen Kurt got another one. He said the UIM's integrity has been tested and is proven over and over again. A part of integrity that has a clean track record. Look at our parties, look at other parties, and you will see the dirty laundering hanging out for all to see. Give a UIM an opportunity to see how change will come. Absolutely. Yeah, because if they cannot fix roads, then clearly they cannot fix the country. Now, gents and lady, but UIM currently, and as it is a party who got volunteers. Everyone is a volunteer currently. What do the UIM need to succeed before we go to our main topic for this evening? Chris, can we start with you, please?
Thank you, Prof. Well, more people, but more people with integrity. Foot soldiers, people on the ground. We need South African people. No races, no colors, no creeds. We need people who want a change. And we need funding. We fund ourselves. And funding is important. I honestly don't believe that past 2026 and 29, if there isn't an absolute overall in regime change, I don't think South Africa will survive. People need to stand up and be counted. I am so sick and tired of hearing people complain, but they don't want to do anything. It's only when it affects them directly do they now want to do something. You can't jump onto the train when the train has left. So we need people with integrity. If you think that you want to join the UIM for political grandeur, we don't need you. If you want to join the UIM because you're looking at a paycheck, we don't need you. We're looking for people who want to serve and be held accountable, who want to be the heroes, the quiet heroes of their communities, the people who give back, who want the children to be safe, who care more than a paycheck. I've always wondered how politicians come into a position looking like a brandsick chicken, and 5 months later they look like a sprinskins. I've always wondered how that works, but we are not those people. Join us if you want to work hard. Join us if you want your children and your grandchildren to have the same upbringing as your parents and your parents had. That's all, Prof.
Thank you. Dan, have you got anything to add here?
I think Chris has pretty much summed up everything that we would need. And yes, just to further elaborate is that we definitely do need more foot soldiers. We need people that's passionate. And to the listeners, if you want to better understand the United Independent Movement, go and read up on the Bato Pele regulations that is enshrined in Section 195 of South Africa's Constitution. If that is something that attracts you and resonates with you, then the United Independent Movement is your part.
Thanks, Danny. President Jacques, enigiets wat jy wil byvoeg op hierdie voor ons oorgaan na ons hoofartikel toe?
Yeah, Prof. Chris absolutely nailed it. I don't want to add anything to what Chris said. He absolutely nailed it. It was actually quite funny when you said this is a party of volunteers. What do we need? And then Chris said more volunteers. That's exactly it. I want to also tell everybody that's listening now, for those of them, those people that are interested in joining us and, joining hands with us and being a part of this amazing party/movement, there's only one requirement, and it's not a degree, it's not experience, it's nothing else than the right attitude. That's what we need. If you have the right attitude, we can get a lot more done with people that have the right attitude than people that have skills and knowledge and experience. Because we have seen in the past, we've dealt with people that had all the experience in the world, that had all the knowledge, political knowledge in the world. There's people that have passed through our party in the last 4 years, people from other parties that joined the UIM that ended up leaving. And they had all the experience and all the knowledge, political knowledge in the world, but they had the worst attitudes ever. So any person that has the right attitude is welcome in the UIM. And that is a positive attitude. It's an attitude of wanting to be, work together as a team, be a team member, have respect for your colleagues, have respect for your fellow members and volunteers, etc. Those are the people that we can work with. We've got a lot of people in the UIM, awesome people, and very few degrees amongst us, but terrific attitudes. That's what we want.
Yeah, thank you, Jacques. If I can just add on that, is that don't worry if you feel that you're not geared up for that. Training will be given. That is part what UIM also does, is to train each and every representative candidate for what are awaiting them, so that they can fulfill their roles as it should to be fulfilled. So moenie worry nie, julle sal opgelei word. Our main topic tonight, an electoral law amendment bill has been tabled last Friday before Parliament, and it's now going to put out for public comment with submissions, but is due by November the 25th of this month. It proposes amendments to the Electoral Commission Act, the Electoral Act, and the Local Government Municipal Electoral Act. And this bill proposes several changes to improve so-called voter registration, party regulation, and electoral procedures. Now, I know Danny have already taken this proposed bill and he have dissected it, and he've looked at it from all angles. Hy het hom behoorlik gediens. Danny, can you give us a bit of an oversight on this, please?
Thank you, Prof. So yes, about 6 days ago, Prof, on the 24th of October, Parliament held a critical session to deliberate on the electoral reform with a concern in transitioning from a closed list proportional representation, which is your PR system, to a hybrid or constituency-based model. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted here. So the session followed an electoral reform, which was with the ERCP, and since then have failed to achieve consensus. So is there any key developments currently? Not at the moment. But there are some divided approaches. For example, the ANC and the DA favor a moderate hybrid model to integrate independent candidates. Now, what does this mean? This is now what President Job was referring to earlier, as well as Chris, when they were speaking about the smaller parties now starting to threaten the obese parties. They started to feel threatened, so they want to make away with the fact that you can now vote for a certain candidate. You now need to vote for a party. So the smaller parties and the independent candidates are outshining them in the previously held wards and predominantly just now becoming a threat to them. So they're trying to keep the threat at bay. The smaller parties such as the IFPs and the Freedom Front Pluses that was part of this discussion maintain the strengthening of PR to preserve minority representation. And not to get too far off, we also need to be in mind that in 2021, the United Independent Movement was one of the first parties that stuck up their hands and said, yes, let's go for independence. Let independent people represent their wards as well. So this, what the ANC and the DA is looking at taking, from my understanding, is they want to make away with that, which puts a risk to smaller parties as well as the independents. So currently there is no resolution to the debate. And like you said, Prof, the 25th of November, it's now open for what's the name?
Public participation.
Constituency, public participation, that's right, sorry. So, but do I see this happening and do I see this being concluded this year? I very much doubt it, because the process delays continued with public consultations and committee reviews make the 2026 implementation improbable. It's because there's three risks that can be identified of that. Is number one is the policy paralysis, which is the ERCP split recommendations and lack of unified political will, which will threaten the delay of reform until 2029, which would be the actual goal is for 2029 because they are significantly under threat at the moment. Coalition fragmentation, smaller parties accuse the ANC and the DA alliance of power retention, rising tensions mirror wider instability within the GNU because of the continuous DA slamming the ANC slamming the DA, but yet they operate under one mandate in the GNU. And then public disillusionment, reform fatigues growth amongst the voters. The voters are getting tired of the disillusionment between the bigger parties, and with this, the Parliament's handling of the process alone in itself has declined to 32%. So without the 50+1, it's not going to pull through.
Thanks, Danny. But I've also read that they actually want to bring a ombudsman in the equation as well, yeah. Have you got any insight on that?
Prof, as far as I understand, they are looking at pulling in which the ombudsman will fall under the RCP split to regulate and make sure that there is fair nurturing or enshrined within the Constitution, to make sure that there's no unconstitutional, how can I say, passings made of this particular bill. But the end fact is that even if you pull in the ombudsman, his weighing is going to be very minimal, because it still has to go through Parliament, and Parliament has to rule it constitutional or unconstitutional. And the biggest thing of this would be the public participation. All the other parties, which they declare smaller parties, and I hope they listen to this radio station, is that, guys, we all as a collective need to watch this very closely, and we need to contest this if it doesn't work in our way. Because the end of the day is, if this bill gets passed, you can say goodbye to democracy, because our democracy is already hanging on the left side.
Okay, Jacques, ek weet jy het heel wat op hierdie onderwerp, want in die begin het jy amper weggehardloop met hom, het jy amper alles weggegee. So nou is jou beurt, asseblief gooi vir hom.
Ja, prof, ek dink wat Danny gesê het nou, toe hy nou daai informasie vir ons nou deurgegee het, jy weet, dit is nou wat ons navorsing gedoen het. Dit is wat ons nou opgetel het op die nuus en op die internet, en jy weet, ons gaan doen nog 'n bietjie navorsing, waarvoor ons nou praat oor sekere onderwerp, net om seker te maak, ons kry ons feite reg. En hy het 'n ding gesê daar wat ek baie lagwekkend gevind het, en dis toe hy gesê dat die ANC en die DA, soos hy in Engels gesê het, the ANC and the DA favor a moderated hybrid model to integrate independent candidates. So die feit dat die ANC en die DA ooreenstem hieroor, jy weet, voor dat met enigiets wat te doen het met governance en verkiesings, dit laat 'n paar vrae opkom by my, moet jy nou baie eerlik te wees. Ek was nou nogal van die opinie gewees dat die DA en die ANC heeltemal verskillende uitkyke gehad op goed soos verkiesings en, jy weet, as ek nou kan Engels praat, governance as a whole, but they seem to be finding more and more common ground as time goes on, which I find very strange and very ironic. You know, smaller parties in the last couple of years have tipped the scales in a lot of coalitions, in a lot of municipal councils in South Africa. And, you know, true democracy means that, you know, people have the right to choose and vote for whomever they want to, and that those people should be represented, especially in a national decision-making process. And I see now, correct me if I'm wrong, I wish Councillor Abdul was here, because I had a brief discussion about this specific thing that I'm going to say right now, but it was brought to my attention that, I don't know if they have already done it, but they are planning to introduce changes that will result in parties having to achieve or get 1% of the total vote in a local government election in order to just qualify for a seat in that local council. So now I sat and I made a couple of calculations in my head, common sense calculations, and I thought to myself, imagine a scenario where you've got 51 parties contesting the elections in Joburg. You've got one party that gets 55% of the total vote, and you've got 50 other parties that all get just under 1%, let's say 0.95. But those 50 parties make up 45% or 50% of the total vote in that council. You're going to end up in a situation now where 50 parties are going to lose out on a seat, 50% of the people's voices are going to be ignored because those parties didn't achieve that 1% requirement or benchmark or whatever you want to call it, and you're going to have one party ruling because they managed to get 50% as one party. That's so stupid. So I'm hoping this was a bad nightmare. I'm hoping that Councillor Abdul read this in the Mad magazine. I don't know if you remember the Mad magazine. But I still have to verify with whether or not that has been actually done, whether they are serious about this, whether this has been implemented. So I'm speaking under correction. But those are just some of the rumors that you hear on the street, and some of the whispers, that some of the stuff that reaches our attention, some of the information that reaches our attention. So, yeah, the fact that the ANC and the DA both favor this, and that they are in agreement with this, and that they are seeing eye to this is already a red flag for me, to be quite honest with you. And as I said earlier, this will only stand to benefit them. I don't know how much this is going to benefit the people, but it's definitely not going to benefit the smaller parties. And the smaller parties benefit the people, because the smaller parties are there to represent those people that have grown completely disillusioned and heartful of the parties that they have been supporting over the last 30 years. People that have been supporting parties over the last 30 years that have grown heartful of those parties have the right to change their minds. And a lot of parties, you won't find somebody leaving the ANC and going to the DA. That's not something that happens regularly. You will not find somebody leave the Freedom Front Plus and go to the EFF, forget it. So a lot of these parties are growing disillusioned and unhappy with their political, let's call it their current political homes or affiliations, and they are looking for alternatives. And we are an alternative. We are presenting an alternative to those people. And so are a lot of the other smaller parties out there. So there is definitely a place for us, a very big place, because there's a very big portion of this country that don't want to vote for any of the top 10, or the so-called top 10. And we are presenting an alternative to those people. And so are a lot of the other parties, like I mentioned. So why they would want to do away with those parties or make it difficult for us to get into local or provincial or national government? I mean, that is a question, I think, that doesn't take a lot of rocket science to answer that question. So that is my submission. Flight, my story is like.
Well, there's one answer: they are afraid, very afraid, and they should be very afraid. But like Chris also always said, he's got a saying for all of us. But I just want to read this message from Benjamin Honeyball. He says, "Good evening all. Many South Africans feel excluded from the discussions around the Electoral Amendment Bill. Could tonight's panel explain how transparent this process are, and wherever public consultation truly influenced the final version of a bill, or if it's just another top-down political exercise?" And I think this is actually some good questions, a couple of questions in one question what I've been asked here. But Chris, before I come to you, I see this bill also says that it wants to prohibit the use of public funds for party political campaigning, with the exception of money from a representative political party's fund. Now, you always say, if there's a situation when we need to go and see and go look, where's the money? Where does it come from and where is it going?
Prof, yes. When in doubt, follow the money. That's the simplest thing. Prof, I'm going to answer a couple of things over here. I believe that Minister Schreiber stands there with a little skull in his hand like Hamlet, and he says, to be or not to be, that is the question. And he parades around by saying whether it is noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, blah, 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 blah. That's all. Smoke and mirrors. This is South Africa, puppy. This is not the United States of America. When you vote for a party and they put somebody in place and you think, is this the best you got to offer? No. This is South Africa for South Africans, all of them. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think we had discussed this, putting an ombudsman there with the current state of affairs in South Africa. We're going to elections at the end of 26, 27, and we'll get a result at the end of 35. And they'll have to back pay everybody from that option there. you can't have a situation in this country where people don't believe in the actual political structure. You can't. You can't have a situation where people do not believe in the rule of law, or people have lost faith in the judiciary, or people have lost faith in the policing system. Like it was mentioned, the DA was also a very small party and it grew. I can promise you one thing. They didn't grow as fast as we are growing. That is one thing I can't say to you. One of my friends was one of the original founding members of the DP. He was actually a fantastic member of the UIM as well until he got ill. So they've been running at this for 50 years already. This is where they are. We don't intend to do that. Your smaller parties are the ones that want to serve. Your 1%ers, your 2% parties, the ones that want to serve, the ones that you don't need to say thank you for. It's the ones that go and serve and they see the result and they say, this is what we have done. We have left the legacy behind. Whether we got paid or not. Sure, we'd like to get paid. But we'd like to see the results more than we'd like to get paid. Mm-hmm. The smaller parties are the way to go. In my opinion, I would rather have South Africa being governed by 10 or 15 parties equally that care equally about this country. With the UIM in front, yes, because we worked hard for it. But we are a country of such diversity that I cannot, for example, I cannot be expected to, if we had to win an award and Jock had to say to me, Chris, I need you to go to Cape Town and I need you to go into council there. I don't know Cape Town. I don't know how the people think. Do you understand? So as a single small political party, we are not influenced by what big political parties, what motivates them. We are only motivated by serving our community. And that is why you should never, ever, ever lose the option of voting for a small party. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Chris. I want to come back to this question of Benjamin. And I mean, transparency is so important. And if we look at transparency in this regard, except the UIM, who are prepared to openly on an international radio station address this matter and speak about it. You here and there get some write-up in some sort of newspaper somewhere, or somebody says something on somewhere on social media in this regard. But it's not in the forefront at all. There's actually no transparency about this. Nothing. Zilts. So the normal person on the street actually are not aware of this. And I mean, that is why the UIM with this program, Straight Talk, brings this type of topics out to educate the listeners out there what is actually happening there, what nobody wants to see. And I would like to know if any one of you want to answer this, how transparent this really are, because according to me it's not very transparent. Because if I just look at municipal level, I mean the consultation process on municipal level is zero. It's a nice note with the outside lines also erased out. There's just nothing, completely nothing. So I can't see that this consultation, public consultation, what they call it, is going to have any effect. We've seen this with the Bella Act, we've seen it with the National Health Act, we see it with all the acts, even with the new proposed Marriage Act and so forth. So whoever panel would like to answer this. Jacques, jy of Dan, asseblief, of Chris.
Prof, I'm going to unfortunately disappoint a lot of people here, and I'm going to unfortunately blame the people of South Africa in this regard, because you know what? You can't expect the news to be delivered to your doorstep every single day. People in South Africa don't take an interest in politics. They don't want to discuss politics. If you just look at the number of people that vote, half of the people in South Africa don't even vote. So, and we've discussed this before. I know there are logistical issues and there's all kinds of issues and factors that play a role. But it paints a very dark picture in terms of political involvement, or the involvement from the public. You know, there's a public participation process that takes place every time a bill is introduced in Parliament, or before a bill gets signed into law. It goes through a public participation process. And I have looked at some of those websites where people can post their comments, and sometimes you've got a bill. Let's take the Bella bill. I wonder how many people commented on that bill before it was passed into law. 100,000? 50,000, 70,000. We've got 60 million people in South Africa. Now, I understand there's a lot of people that are not of age, but those figures are staggering. Unfortunately, that is, we are to blame for this at the end of the day. We are to blame for who gets elected. That's our problem, because we are we cast the deciding vote. We are the ones that actually make the choice. The choice is ours. Those people don't elect themselves. We hand them a whip, and then we get whipped with the whip we handed to them. That is what we do. There's a government gazette, the Staatskoerant, that gets published every single Friday. I wonder how many people actually read it.
Oh.
Everything that government plans, everything that government does is published in that newspaper. We're not talking about the corruption and stuff. The corruption is being done under the table, and I understand that. But as far as governance is concerned, and governing regulations and all of these things and bills and laws and what have you, those things get published every week. The people don't take the time to read it.
True.
They don't take. I wonder how many people actually read. What we discussed, the electoral amendment reform, that reform bill. This was the main discussion point or topic for this evening. I wonder how many people have actually or are hearing about this for the very first time. And this stuff has been plastered all over the news and media, social media. People need to start getting involved with politics in South Africa. There's two things in South Africa that decide and determine every decision that you make, or everything that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in South Africa. That's laws and politics. That basically rules and regulates and governs your whole life. How can you not be involved in those processes? How can you not take a very keen interest in those things? How can you not take an interest in laws and legislation and politics when they affect your work, your education, your safety, the economy, everything? It affects everything, and people are not involved. So yes, you know what? If you're not going to ask questions, you're not going to get answers.
True.
And if you ask questions and you don't get answers, then you demand answers.
True.
But people can't expect the news, like I said, to be delivered to their doorstep every single day. They need to be proactive, and they need to find out, ask questions, inquire, do a bit of digging. That is what we do. What we do.
Yeah, well,
but the people need to be involved in this process. That is very, very important.
Absolute.
And just on a final note, just to get back to the small party thing again, we are a party of common sense. We believe in common sense. Common sense trumps experience and titles and degrees any day of the week.
Absolutely. Yeah,
if smaller parties were that insignificant, why are there so many small parties out there? If the ruling parties and the big parties were doing what they were supposed to do, why are they not growing? Why are they getting smaller? And why are a lot of people leaving them and forming their own parties? That's just common sense.
Absolutely. As I can say, as my old days were said, with a little guy on the corner with a newspaper, read all about it. And I just want to say, let's hear all about it on Joy Radio, here on Straight Talk with a UIM. Now, I've got about a minute and a half for each one of you on closing thoughts, and I want to start with Tilanie. Maybe she can just give the voters in her area just a short reason why they should vote for her when the election comes up next year.
Why to vote for me? Okay, very, very quickly. Apart from it being a really awesome party that stands for the people, I literally promise to do everything in my power to bring about change.
Thank you very much, Tilanie. That's where you got it out of the horse's mouth. Your candidate down there in Helderberg in the Western Cape. If you got issues, you've got problems, you've tried the rest, now come and try the best down there. And that is Tilanie from the UIM. Danny, your last thoughts and hoe sal ons sê, jou laaste gedagtes op vanaand se onderwerp van ons.
My quote to anchor tonight would be: representation without accountability is occupation by another name. The UIM will always argue for restoration, the direct link between citizens and governance, accountability for local engagement, and transparent civic feedback loops.
Thank you very much, Danny. Chris, your last thoughts for us?
Prof, two things. If everything was so great in this government, there wouldn't be little parties or small parties. Mm-hmm. And number two, our future president of this country is in his 40s. He's not a geriatric. He's not unbendable in his ways and unsympathetic to people. He can change if he wants to, anything he likes, because he's not an old man stuck in his ways. We are a young party with young aspiring people. Don't look at my beard, my wife did this to me. But we are the future of this country. We are diverse. We cover all racial spectrums, all religious spectrums. We are the future of this country.
Absolutely. Amen.
That's why people have to vote for the UIM.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. President Jacques Taljaard, jou laaste afsluitwoorde vir vanaand se program. Vir die luisteraars van die UIM af asseblief.
Prof, yes, thank you. Thank you to the panel. Tonight was another awesome discussion. I just want to remind everybody out there that there's hope for South Africa. We are very positive about this country. That's why we are staying. That's why we are not going anywhere. That's why we are fighting. We won't fight for something that's not worth fighting for. So people mustn't be all doom and gloom. There's positive things happening in South Africa. And I want to leave you with not a quote, just a sentence. Anything that you're not trying to change, you are choosing. That's my final message.
Amen. Thank you for that, Jacques. Listeners, from my side, my final point is the following. Stop being a couch potato. Stop sitting there, fingers on the buttons of your phones, on your WhatsApp groups, complaining, moaning, groaning, and doing nothing about it. It's time that we all stand up, that we start taking responsibility for ourselves, our kids, and our grandkids and their kids for the future. And if you do not know where to go, if you say you've tried the rest, as I already mentioned, come and try the best, because we are here to serve. The UIM are here to serve. We don't want to be served. Not at all. This party started as a party for the community, and it will stay a party for the community, for each and every citizen of this country. I actually had a meeting with an MMC today, and he made a comment, and I said to him, no, don't worry, after the next local elections, then you can become my MMC. Because he said he will be maybe the mayor, and I said, no ways, you can become my MMC if you're lucky. And that is my last 2 cents on tonight. I greet you all, and And I thank Joy Radio, your companion in Jesus, for giving us this opportunity on this airwaves. And until next week, diarise it, 6:30 on next Thursday evening, when we're going to be back with 3 topics, political topics. We're going to introduce another new candidate to you, and we're going to have another interesting main topic to discuss with you. From a panel here, and from myself, from a studio in Valuwe, good night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Just here on Joy Radio. Vader, ons dankie vir u leiding met die gesprekke wat ons vanaand gevoer het op die program. Here, wees saam met iederlik en elkeen gedurende hierdie naweek wat voorlê en die week, totdat ons weer by mekaar kom op hierdie program. Seën elke liewe luisteraar in die naam van Jesus. Amen.